You are now listening to CTR Media Network.
The family. CTR Media Network. Yeah. Best in the biz. Yeah. Join the team. CTR is who we are, the media network, that's the best by far. Whether you listen at your home, at your job, in your car, come get the information that's needed above par. Never lasting, motivational podcasting, giving you the answers to the questions that you're asking. Serious talks and topics, how to come up and profit, how to better yourself, your health is here, we got it. Reaching 350 million, they tuning in. We in 50 different countries, we all can. And like-minded, find your purpose and your assignment. Come get your fix, your feel, your mental alignment. Get active and speak to the masses. Build your influence all levels and all classes. Now you know you can monetize and grow. CTR Media Network, start the show. CTR Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CTR Media Network TV. Yes, and yes, where we empower entrepreneurs, creatives, and industry disruptors to grow through podcasting, TV, and media. Today's guest, we have the amazing Dr. Bramante, and he is going to help us unlock our brilliance, mastering mindset and media creation. And just like I said, I am so excited about having Dr. Albert here today is because he is going to be tackling these topics and so much more on how I'm talking to you, how you are stuck in your own mess. But guess what? He's going to help us be able to clean up that mess and make it a beautiful butterfly. So without further ado, we're going to bring on today's featured guest. Yes, Dr. Albert Bramante. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tina. I'm really happy to be here. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Listen, it's easy when you're doing the stuff that you're doing. So I'm like, okay. Where do I want to begin first? So when I think about what it is that you do, Dr. Bramante, you've helped actors land some of the biggest gigs of their life. You have also helped them be able to develop or be able to identify what their superpower is. And many people may be saying, well, how can Dr. Bramante help me? I'm a creative, I'm a podcaster, I'm a TV host, or I'm an entrepreneur. How can what you do help them? Well, guess what? Why did you decide, or what inspired you? This is what I want to know. What inspired you to merge what you do for actors and creatives and then bring it into the world of entertainment and bring it into the world of psychology?
Well, I started off as a psychology major who always had an interest in the creative arts. So I was involved in like a drama club in high school. I took some undergrad classes in theater and acting as electives, and it was always an interest of mine. I wasn't an interest of mine to be an actor purely per se, but I loved being around the creative energy of actors, or filmmakers, producers, hosts. I just enjoy being around that environment. Like those are my people. That's like my tribe, are actors and performers. So I wanted to always support them because it's not an easy, it's an exciting, career, but it's also not a very easy one to be in. There's a lot of competition. There's that instability. You don't know when you're going to get the next paycheck or the next job. So there's that. And I wanted to create a vehicle as a way to support them. So, I kind of started off as an agent, which I still do today. But I also, with my psychology background, wanted to figure out how can I support them even more than just, trying to find them jobs as an employment agent, for actors. So while I was going for my PhD, I had to do a dissertation, as you all know, which is, the rite of passage for anybody going to become a doctor. So I wanted to figure out a real world problem to solve. And that was what my advisors had suggested. So I started my PhD program right around the same time I started my businesses. And one of the things that really kept me up at night, or like I was banging my head against the wall, was there were so many actors that I was working with that were verbally, telling me how much they wanted to work, but their actions were telling me another story. Their actions, they were coming up for excuses why they couldn't make auditions, they had jobs, obligations, or sometimes I had the rare case, well, not rare, but unfortunate cases where sometimes they would even just no show on an audition because of, and they would say, the excuses like I got caught in traffic or I didn't feel well this morning. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, what's really going on here? Yes, maybe the occasional accident or, can occur, but why is this really happening? And so that's where I said, I'm going to do my dissertation on why are actors self-sabotaging? Because there was a lot of work, literature about self-sabotage in general, but it was mainly geared towards like athletes and, high, high CEOs and all that. Why? But nothing with actors or performers. So that's where I bridged the gap between what was currently there and missing. So that's a long story short. And then, I decided after a few years, after several years after I have my PhD, now I want to combine this into a book. And combine my research as well as my knowledge into, the book that was published last year. So that's how I got started today. And it is the best of both worlds for me, because I love psychology. I'm a psychology, person at heart. But I also love working with actors. So it's a great way to combine the two.
Have you ever thought about this, Dr. Aber? When I think about creators, creatives and actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even entrepreneurs,
right.
Many of us battle with imposter syndrome. So when I think about that you have this psychology background, what do you think is the main reason behind this imposter syndrome, and how can we start breaking free from it?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Tina, because I actually have a topic about this in my book, because imposter syndrome, because it has a lot to do with, maybe fears and insecurities, and especially, with actors receiving, a lot of no's, it can start to create self-doubt. And that's why the second part of my book, second part of my title of my book is mastering mastering self-doubt. So, because it is really important, that comes up. That's what really imposter syndrome is all about, is the self-doubt. You start doubting, am I really worth, being this actor? Am I really worth, running this company? Who am I to run this company? Who am I to be, the speaker? I'm just little old me. And you start to think that. A lot of it has to do with fear too. Now, I also talk in my book about fear of success. Talk about fear of failure, but I think a lot of people, there's a fear that's not being talked about enough, and that's fear of success.
What a concept! That's right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that. Fear of success, and I really want to dive deeper into that concept, because that's like a light bulb moment. But it made me think about the happy file. You created this wonderful concept around this, which I feel like it may possibly lead into this deeper conversation, which I thought was very powerful. But can you share how entrepreneurs and how us as content creators can use what you do daily in order for us to boost our self-esteem, to stay motivated from day to day? Because you talk about imposter syndrome, you talk about self-doubt, but I have never heard anyone talk about the fear of success. Let's dive deeper into that conversation. I'm leaning in.
Well, it's all related to fear of change, because when you become successful, so let's say you're like content creator and you get that contract or that goal, that metric, where now you have landed a major contract or with a major vendor, and so now you have a lot more responsibilities, a lot more obligations. Your life is going to change. If you're that entrepreneur and you land that sale or that major account, so what can happen there is your life is going to change. Maybe you have higher expectations now. There, you might one of the things I talk about in my book is be careful about the crowd you keep around you, the tribe you keep around you. And that, unfortunately, can be family and your close friends who might not always have the best of intentions for you. And that can hold you back, too. That can create that self-doubt. Because if they're acting out of their own insecurities and their own, unhappiness, they can project that onto you. And therefore, shoot down your dreams, because that happens a lot with the actors I work with. Their family or their significant others or their friends are like, maybe it's time to do another career change, or this acting thing may not be for you. And even though they may be consciously saying, I'm doing this with the best of intentions, they're responding out of their own fears and insecurities. Because what they're really scared of is, well, if you hit it big, you're going to leave us, or you're going to forget about us. And also, because we're social as human beings, we value relationships as much as possible. So we're afraid of losing those relationships. So, fear of change, this fear of relationships, can cause, therefore, us to play it safe. But what way to, our brain, our subconscious mind is going to protect us from fear by not letting us achieve. So therefore, I'm not going to put out even though consciously I may be put as a content creator, but saying, hey, I'm putting out good content, but I'm not doing what I can do. As an actor, I may not be giving the best at auditions because, well, I'm getting the role may be more terrifying too now because my life is going to change. So there's a whole host of reasons why we do that. For your relationships, and that's another thing I address in my book, is take stock of your relationships in your life. Also, I think another actionable item for your listeners is watch the crowd. Hang out with high achieving people. If you listen to the speakers, even like Tony Robbins, that would kind of say like you're some. I can tell a lot about you by the 5 people you hang out with the most. So your tribe should be, at least on your playing field, even higher. I hang out with higher successful. If you're a content creator, go for those that have, a lot more followers than you have, and start seeing what they're doing and hang out more with them. If you're an entrepreneur, hang out with more higher, more established entrepreneurs, because they'll build you up, not hold you down.
I agree with you. I agree with you with that, Dr. Albert, because I tell myself as well as other people that every day, your company you keep is very, very, very important. I want you to expand on what you were speaking about, but I wanted to touch this because you have expertise in this particular area. And I'm seeing this so much on social media, in different studies, especially when you start talking about the study of the brain, with NLP. Now we see those letters all the time. NLP, if you're reading any type of thing about your body, and self-sabotage and trying to achieve higher level of achievement.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, for people, my viewing and listening audience that don't know what NLP is, can you explain that in layman's terms, in a nutshell, what that is and how it can help us?
It's 3 letters stand for neuro-linguistic programming. So neurology, meaning your mind, your brain; linguistic, the language you speak, not only outwardly but inwardly to yourself; and then programming. So it's kind of like working with how you plan your day, how you go about your behavior. So it's implementing like your brain and language combining together for change. And there's a lot of things we can do to change the wiring of a brain. So we have to change internally before we can really change externally. Because a lot of people, have a hard time making changes in their life. It's like it's easy to say one thing and not do it. So you got to change yourself. So I often say change your internal environment before your external environment, your external life is going to change. So that might mean changing your habit, changing your lifestyle a bit. what really inspired me, is all these years I've been on social media, and we see, especially around the new year, oh, it's a new year, new me, you know, right around December, the 20th to the 30th, like the honeymoon phase about the new year coming in the first week in January. Oh, this is going to be my year. And then yet every year is the same year. Because what's happening here is you're not committing to the changes internally. So that might mean changing your lifestyle. So when you do these changes over time, where neurology is going to rewire itself, your brain, there's something called neuroplasticity, which is about the brain and nervous system being able to rewire itself and make new connections. And the way to do that is by changing your behavior, changing your internal states, how you react to things. So some practical techniques that you can use. One is visualization, which has been talked about for decades, and you can read this in any type of self-help book will tell you to visualize success. So let's say you have a meeting coming up, you have you're about to record a video tomorrow, or you have a presentation to make. Visualize it in your head over and over again of going well. So adding a little bit of like an NLP technique would be to visualize yourself in a movie theater, watching yourself on screen, doing this presentation or doing this, whatever you're setting up to do, and it going very, very well. And then in your imagination, I would always say, now step into the movie screen. And now you're in the movie of it going very, very well, or whatever it is. You have such a great, powerful outcome. The brain does not know the difference between reality and fiction. So you're already going to be approaching, if you do this several times, you're already going to act like the success already happened. Your brain is going to think, okay, I'm going into this meeting, and I'm meeting an old friend, or I'm doing this, and then it's going to make a big difference with lowering the nerves, the anxiety that comes in. So that's another technique. One technique. Another technique I often use, especially with my actors, is watch the words you use when you introduce yourself. So if I said to you, or if I pitched myself to be a guest and said, "Hi, Dr. Gracie, I'm Albert. I'm an aspiring podcast guest. I don't have any, experience. Most likely no. Like, okay, you're going right into, or just like if somebody introduces, submits himself for representation. If I hear I'm an aspiring actor, or I'm a struggling artist, or I'm a starving artist, no, that is what the reality. Your words are creating a reality. So your brain isn't saying, okay, well, you're saying I'm starving, so therefore, let's create this reality of you starving. So that's why I use the language. So I'm a content creator. I'm I'm an established entrepreneur. I have even before it happened, if you say the words, when I was, going up the ranks of my agency, before I hit the level, I was telling people that I was booking on TV and film. Now, yes, I was booking, but it was indie films at the time. It was small things. But I kept the mentality up of telling myself and telling other people, I book, successful actors in TV and film. Maybe 2 months later, I landed, I had my first primetime guest star in Honor SVU placement. So that became my reality now. So speak it as if it's in existence. And this might sound sometimes a little woo-woo, but I think it's so true. Speak your success as it's already happened. Imagine. So another thing with neurolinguistic programming, it uses all your senses. So we have three primary learning modes: visual, auditory, visual with our eyes, auditory with our ears, and kinesthetic with our body. Now, one of the misconceptions that people think, well, you're usually strong on the other. I say we use all three equally. We learn, by hearing, seeing, and feeling. So when you're visualizing this, not only just visualize or imagine it, but hear, visualize this in color. So sounds. What does it feel like in your body? And then really embody that. And that's the way I think really successful start. So that's the thing with NLP. Also, one other last thing I'll say about NLP, is their mentality. There's one statement that we go by about failure or mistakes, and the statement that I'll say: there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. Mm. So even if you are that content creator and you mess up that video, or we're our worst critic when we watch ourselves. So sometimes you make produce a piece of content and be like, "Oh, do I really sound like that?" Or do I really, what's up with that thing on my face? And you start self-doubting comes in. So, if there is something that you made a mistake or an error on, say that, well, okay, now I know to look out for this in the next piece of content I put out, or the next pitch I make, or the next, deal I try to make. Okay, this didn't work. I'm going to put myself out there. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. And what I often say is, rather than say, always end when you say a not statement or it hasn't happened, always use the end of the word with yet. So if you're a content creator and, I haven't, you don't, rather than saying, I don't have 1,000 followers, it's like, I have not reached 1,000 followers yet. Because when you say the word yet, that indicates a growth mindset. That indicates possibilities. So, or, I haven't, as an entrepreneur, I haven't, I don't have $100,000. No, you say I haven't reached $100,000 yet in sales. So, or revenue. So use the word yet at the end of the no statements.
I love it. I love it. So what are we going to do? It's not time for our show to end yet. We're going to take a commercial break with the amazing Dr. Albert. We'll be back. We're going to talk about more of how you can overcome your mess, turn your beautiful mess into a beautiful butterfly. So we're going to take a commercial break and we'll be back in a moment.
Hey Think Fam, it's your favorite host, Michael Finkley, and you can listen to us on CTR Media Network. Go listen in.
And just like that, we are back. But I come along with an amazing guest that you saw just before our commercial break. It is the amazing Dr. Albert. And he was just helping us get out of our own way, getting out of our mind. And before we went to commercial break, he was dancing on the topic that I want to talk about a little bit further. What was that topic? Reframing your mind, rethinking how you can be a high performer. He told us to use the word yet at the end of something that hasn't happened yet, and how it's very important that we reframe how we think and we reframe what we say, because what we say and what we think materialize in our life. So with that being said, Dr. Albert, I would love to dive a little bit deeper into this topic, because you personally write about reframing failure as a tool, not a trap. And so how can business owners, content creators, and even some actors that actually watch CTR Media Network, and they are featured on the show as well, how can we bounce back quicker from these failures and reframing our mind about what failure is?
Well, just like as I said before, they're learning experiences, they're feedback. So you didn't fail, you learn, you're learning, you're a work in progress. That's what we say, we're always a work in progress. The fact that we're living, getting each day to, blessed day to live, we're a work in progress. So, as we're human beings, it's okay. We're not gonna, we're gonna make mistakes. There was only one perfect human being ever in our life, ever in the existence of the universe, depending on someone's, religious spirits and beliefs. And, that might not have worked out well for him in some aspect. So I think that, part of it is just being human, accepting that you will have setbacks, but they're opportunities to grow. They're not opportunities to look down on. So going back, even with my work with actors, because a lot of times I'll hear people say, oh, I wish I wanted to become an actor, but I don't want the rejection. I don't like the rejection. And so another word that I would like everyone to get out of their vocabulary is the word rejection.
Mm.
Because for one thing, especially with actors, there's sometimes thousands of actors competing for one role. So with one role, it can only go to one actor, which meant that it's not personal. It didn't go for you. That's all that meant, was that it wasn't meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I often say is there's no such thing as rejection. All it is that your services are not needed right now. So if you're an entrepreneur and you don't make that sale, or a content creator and you don't get that deal, or that collaboration, or you get turned down. So what you can say is like, okay, well, I'm not needed today. So what's my next thing? And then follow up and say, hey, 6 months later, this is, let's reestablish that. So, I think the point is not to take it personally. I mean, I know it's hard to do, because especially a lot of times actors, when you go for auditions, you're putting your heart and soul and, out there and everything out there, and making yourself vulnerable. So, but I would say walk out of that with the mentality of, okay, let it go. So, anytime you are making a presentation or a meeting or making a piece of content, as soon as it's done, let it go. So even with actors, when I often say, when that audition is over, it's done. It's over. Let it go. Let it completely be over. Don't dwell on it. Now your focus should be on what's the next opportunity. What's the next thing for me to do? Even when you post the next bit of content, even if it's great piece of content, it's like, oh, that was great. Okay, next. And then work on that momentum and just keep going. So there's no such thing as rejection. You're just not needed today. It's not a personal decision. It's not personal. And I think that will help get out of your head a bit, and get out of your the funk that sometimes you can go into. It's not needed yet. And also our minds are wired to believe in negative, so I use this example a lot. So let's say you give a presentation, or you make, whatever it is, and you'll get 20 good reviews, but one or two are maybe not so good, critical or scathing even. And very often we're going to be focusing on that one and ignoring the 20 good reviews that we just received. And what I often say is like, okay, if you're an actor, you get a negative review by the press or an audience member. So look at that review objectively. First of all, is there anything in there that could be constructive? That maybe say, because I've gotten constructive feedback on things I've done where I'm like, okay, that might have hurt, it might have stung in the beginning, but I'm like, there's a lot of good information here in this that I can use. So take whatever, even the stuff that you perceive as negative, and what can you use that for? What, and also sometimes the negative feedback you receive, if it's really negative, it could not have anything to do with you. It's just, you might have reminded somebody of someone they don't like. It has nothing to do with you, even though it may be targeted at you. So take the feedback always with like a grain of salt. What can you do from that?
I like that. And I think it really boils down to us as individuals doing that self-work that's needed. I mean, we're very good with making sure this outside look a certain way, right? But that inside is not looking the same way. So what I'm hearing with all of the advice that you're giving us and the recommendations, that it's very important that we work on this mind and what's inside and what we say and what we think and who we are around,
Right.
because all of those play factors in it. So what about you? You talk about this topic of self-confidence, right? And I have never heard anyone talk about self-confidence in this way. So you say self-confidence, we know it's online all the time. Everybody talk about new you, new self, this, that is trending. But how can we distinguish toxic high self-esteem, which I never heard that type of jargon before, and healthy self-esteem? So basically, what's the difference, and why does it matter in building your brand or building your business or being a content creator or actor or actress?
Well, they're all related. I mean, healthy self-esteem and toxic self-esteem, I think the biggest difference would be humility, being humble. Humility is the key. So, there's nothing wrong with thinking highly of yourself and thinking that you're valuable and you deserve a seat at the table, but the difference with toxic self-esteem is you're not open to feedback or constructive criticism. The one thing that I've found, and this is when I did my dissertation, one of the variables I did my dissertation on was toxic high self-esteem. And I've even found it surprising too in the beginning when I was first doing this. But they're almost like, I would say toxic high self-esteem and low self-esteem are cousins. They were highly related, very much. And the difference with toxic high self-esteem would be not open to feedback, not being coachable. These people, when you point out, constructivism, they get really defensive. They think they're the best, of the best. But yet when you point out and say, well, maybe this could be done in a different way, they shoot you down and start putting you down. It's like, well, no, you're the one wrong. And sometimes with a small number of actors that I've found, is they're not coachable, so when you try to tell them suggestions, it's like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm, went to this school, 20 years ago, I'm trained, and so, but they're not coachable, because with any profession, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a content creator, whether you're an actor, actress, or professional, you're always going to be learning. And I often say this, like, I'll always be learning till the last day of my life. I'm constantly learning. I have a PhD. I'm always reading. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always, engaging new content because I need to learn. And that's, I think, the big difference, because, having a healthy self-esteem, knowing you deserve a seat at the table, but you're always learning and you're always coachable, and you believe everybody else is equal, and you help motivate other people that are struggling. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Those are some great points, because like you're saying, we have to be a forever learner. And by being a forever learner, that's going to enable us to be able to grow and be able to hone in on our skills even more. And I know that you have so much experience, not only in the books, but also experience in life, because you have worked with so many different high performing talents over the decades. And so with all that experience, do you notice one or maybe two habits or mindsets that you see that is consistent with those type of individuals who have mastered the art of succeeding in the arts, or maybe they are a business owner as well? What are those one or two habits that they've been able to implement in their life that has helped them be successful? Have you noticed any of those habits?
Yeah, having a disciplined system. So in my book, I talk about personality traits, and one of the traits I talk about is conscientiousness. So being conscientious and being disciplined, being focused, and that is one of the biggest successes. And a lot of psychological research has backed this up. That the more conscientious you are, the more disciplined you are, the more successful you're going to be. So the more hardworking you are. So keeping, a sense of commitments. Now, one of the things I will say about with the virtue of conscientiousness, a lot of us are not as conscientious as we think we are. We overestimate that. So if you take a look, there's a lot of personality tests you can take online that measure conscientiousness, and a lot of people who take these tests are surprised they don't score as high as they think they are. So maintaining a disciplined system, a focused system, a calendar. I don't say a to-do list, but I say a calendar is important. Maintaining a calendar, maintaining a focus of things you're going to do and follow through on them. That I would say is the biggest success rate I see. And again, just the confidence and the belief in themselves.
Why do you say a calendar instead of a to-do list?
Because if I say, let's say I put a list up and say I need to clean today, I need to, send out these emails, but I don't set an actual date or time on them. I just have a to-do list. And then that list gets longer and longer and longer. And then our inboxes get cluttered and cluttered and cluttered. And before you know it, we're drowning in unresolved tasks. So putting it in a calendar. So I would say it's not necessarily, just a to-do list alone. I would say putting it into a calendar, because when you put it into a calendar, you're actually creating that action that will say, okay, this has to be done now. And I've been experimenting this too. Maybe setting up a calendar, 2 or 3 times a day. I'm going to answer emails. Okay. I'm going to block out 15 to 20 minutes to read and answer emails at a specific time, rather than saying, well, I'm going to answer emails today. Well, that's great. But then you're going to get distracted with other things that are going to happen. So if you block time out with your calendar, that's also a major thing that I see with successful entrepreneurs, actors. They have a system in place.
I agree with you. And I really appreciate how you broke down the difference, because many people probably saying, well, what's the difference between the to-do list and the calendar? Because both of them telling me what to do. But I feel like the piggyback off of what you said is that the calendar is more accountable. It has that accountability because you said, you have the date, you have the time, a to-do list. I never thought about a to-do list being something that is not as structured as we have been trained to think it is.
Yeah.
We have been trained to create a to-do list, but then, like you said, it get longer and longer and longer, and then you're like, "Oh my God, I can't complete all this."
Yeah, and we start, and also, to add to that, we start engaging in a someday phenomenon. Well, someday I'm gonna create that podcast, or someday I'm gonna create this content. But someday is someday. It's not when. So one way we could hold other people accountable is to say, well, I'm going to create a podcast. Okay, when? Tell me what date. What date are you going to shoot, film? What date? I'm going to make this presentation. When? I'm going to reach out and pitch. When? And I think when you start doing that, it creates action, and we don't sit there saying, I wish I did this. Now, I'm going to call myself out on this in the podcast, because I'm a human being. I wanted to write this book in 2017. Okay. I didn't write it until 2023. I kept saying, I'm going to write a book someday. Until I set myself in 2023, and I kind of, said, okay, when are we going to do this? Because another statistic that's sobering, what really woke me up out of this, is that only 1% of people who say they want to write books write them. 99% of people who want to write a book will never write it. That was the statistic I heard. And that was a wake-up call. Like, no, I don't want to be that 99%. I want to be that 1%. So I adopted that. Okay, now I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to set aside 2 hours a night and write and edit and write and edit and, come out. And in about 2 months' time, I had the book done.
Wow.
Otherwise, I probably would have been sitting here right now. I wish I wrote the book. And now I did. So create a system. When I say a system, start putting dates, because that adds accountability. Okay, when? Well, I'm going to write, I'm going to put this content out. Okay, when? When can we expect the content? And start asking other people that are interested in content creation or starting content creation or a YouTube channel. Okay. Well, I want to, okay. So when can you post your first 5 videos? When are you going to do that? Next, and you pull out your calendar. Okay. So let me know. So when you're holding other people accountable too, you say, okay, pull out the calendar and say, okay, send me the date you're going to do that. Right. And now it's going to happen now.
That is so true, because you write it down, make it plain. It happens more than you just, I say people who doing the brain dump, but they're doing it just thinking about it and not actually physically putting an action to it. It 9 times out of 10 is not going to get done. And I'm going to be honest with you, as you get older, you don't retain as much information as you did in your 20s. I mean, I can't speak for you. I can speak for myself.
Well, let me reframe that. So, you have
reframe so I can say it right.
So
reframe it real time.
That can happen to other people my age, but it's not going to happen to me because I have a system in place. So I think when we start talking about it, especially getting older, because I'm not going to lie, I'm close to 50. Am I going to sit there and say, well, my body's declining? No. Well, that's great. Exactly. I'm not. So I think having that mind, set up now, even if memory is a challenge, now you start writing things down, document things, put on a calendar. We have so many apps now that can help with that. So create, put things on the calendar immediately. Every time I have a meeting, I put it on my Google Calendar. Even if it's tomorrow, I still have it on my calendar because it'll have, I don't, there's not an excuse here. That's the accountability thing. Why do you think doctors' offices or important meetings will call the day before to confirm? So you don't forget.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that reframing. See, we can say things without even thinking about it. And so you saw real time how Dr. Albert, he heard it. He was like, wait a minute. Let's reframe this. Okay. Yes. And I appreciate this because now you guys, you just saw real life application, how this can work in your life. So what we're going to do, we're going to take another commercial break. And then once we take that commercial break, we're going to come back and we're going to have some more deep conversation with Dr. Albert. And see, he already helped me, so I know he's going to help you as well. So we'll be back in a moment, okay?
Thank you so much, CTR Media Network, Dr. Tina Ramsey, along with the staff of CTR Media Network and all of the podcasters that have programs featured on CTR Media Network. I'm Kim Jacobs, the host of The Kim Jacobs Show, and we're bringing balance to the world one household at a time. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to be associated with Dr. Tina Ramsey and her program with CTR Media Network. They go over and beyond the call of duty and do exceptionally well when it comes to the podcasters. I'm saying things that are like, ooh, mind-blowing. They are exceeding our expectations, and I cannot be more grateful and more thankful. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all of your professionalism, your consideration, going the extra mile to make sure that your podcasters have what we need to be able to have a thriving program and to get exposed to over 350 million households, 46 countries. I am excited to be a part of CTR Media Network, and I don't take it for granted. Thank you, Dr. Tina Ramsey, for all that you do. God bless you.
And just like that, we are back. And I come along with Dr. Albert. We're going to jump more into this conversation. This has been such an intriguing, mind-blowing conversation with him about rewiring this brain and rewiring what we say, what we think, who we're around. The list goes on. And how understanding that our mind, like he said, is basically programmed to be negative. But don't lose hope, because we have what it takes to reframe it. And it brings me to Dr. Albert's book, because he's been referencing his book a lot. And I mean, you guys got to get a copy. Normally, I don't say this during the interview, but you got to go get a copy of this book. I know listen, I have digital copy, but this is a book I want to have in my hands. All right. So I'm going to go get myself as well. But I know you mentioned about personality traits, and you talk about that in your book, but how can us as individuals understanding our personality be able to better help us be able to be more productive in our life, whether we're a content creator, actor, entrepreneur, whatever the case may be? How can it help us be more be able to be more successful, I would say, and be able to use that understanding to help us?
Well, it's a good question, and I would say I'll use kind of like the going with the big five to begin with. So start with openness. So expose yourself to new things. Learn. Learn new things. Listen to other content creators. Listen to other podcasts that you may not necessarily want. That you may never normally think you'd listen to. Explore new topics. So being open. To new experiences, because a lot of people are not open, like open-minded. So you know start thinking about yourself when you go to a restaurant. Do you order new food, or do you just order the same thing on the menu every time? you know if you order the same thing over time, you may not be as open-minded as you think you are. So being open-minded, try new things, get exposed to new ideas, different peer groups. When you go to events, sometimes I often say the best thing to do is sit at tables where, if you go with a friend, I think it's great for that support system, but you should be, separating and hanging out with new people. So sit at new tables every time, like we'll say you go to a repeated event and there's lunch or dinner served. Sit at new, because you need to learn from other people. That's the first thing. Conscientiousness we kind of addressed a little bit, which is having a system set up, a planner, a calendar, a workflow, and plan it beforehand. What some of the best entrepreneurs will plan their day before the day or two before. Okay, this is what I'm going to do today. Now, yes, some things will come up, that are going to be last minute. But when you have a solid plan, you can, and you can even put in your day. Okay, there may be an hour or two here that I may have to shift, or because something may come up. The next trait is extroversion. Now, it's hard. It's a little difficult sometimes for, especially if you're a content creator or you're a business owner. You have to be a little bit extroverted to some. You have to get out of your shell a little bit. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to rooms full of people, or crowds full of people. I'm not a big fan of like the networking events that are in bars and clubs, because that is just a little overwhelming. I consider myself an ambivert, which is like the middle between introvert and extrovert. So like I love people, but if I'm, I'm not comfortable in a large bar or club or lounge setting where there's hundreds of people around that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you still have to put yourself out there. So as a content creator, you have to be recording and reaching out to other content creators for collaboration. If you're a business owner, you have to contact with other entrepreneurs. You have to put yourself out there. And then the next is agreeableness. So agreeableness is how well you cooperate and how well you compromise. So being somewhat coachable is also another trait that we all have to be able to do, is be coachable. But also there's a balance too, because sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. And when it comes to negotiations, if you're negotiating a contract, if you're negotiating a sale, it's good, yes, to be agreeable, but at the same time, you also have to stand your ground. Other side, whether you're the business owner or the customer. So, and then the last one is neuroticism, which is an odd word, but I feel like neuroticism is all about how you react to stress. So not working on that, because some people are more neurotic than others. What I mean by that is they get reactive when things don't go their way, or they get frustrated, they get easily phased. You'll see these people get really anxious very easily. So sometimes working on that, some meditation sometimes, or just being mindful can help. Taking time out, taking steps to recharge. also a work-life balance is great. I mean, I know a lot of times when we're entrepreneurs or content creators, we think we have the misconception we have to be on 24/7. That's not true. You need time off for your family, for your friends, just even for your own self. So I'm a big believer. If you need to take time off, a weekend off, or you should all everyone should be taking weekends off, or somehow 2 days a week off, some degree of time away. So that's using kind of like using the big five in a sense of what I talk about in your favor.
Mm. That was excellent and some great, great points. And so we have been referencing this book the entire show. And you're probably saying, what's the name of this book? Well, if you want to confront self-doubt and master self-sabotage for performing artists, and don't think it's just for artists, just actor and actors, as you can see, his strategies actually work for content creators, podcasters, TV hosts, entrepreneurs, business owners, anybody that is in the creative space. And his book is called Rise Above the Script: Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. Listen, this book is not just for artists. Like I said, it's for all of us. And as you can see, he helped me real time. Real time. And I am a great content creator, right? But I'm a podcaster. I have many different hats that I wear in this, I would say, creation, this world of digital creation, okay? And so what I'm telling you is this is a book that you're going to need to help you with your mental health, okay? One thing that I personally see with content creators, entrepreneurs, business owners, actors and actresses, because we battle some of the same things, is that we don't take the time, like Dr. Aber said, to recharge, to feed our minds with things that are going to help us be better, things that's going to help us rewire the brain. Because if you don't know how to do it, you need to speak with someone who already have the understanding and the knowledge to help you go systematically, step by step. Because if it's not something that you know, you have to go to somebody who do know. So this particular book, I know you said you was going to do it in 2017, but you did it in 2023, and that's all right with me. I'm happy that you have this book ready. So Dr. Albert, where can we find your book?
So it's available on Amazon, and I have it in different formats. I have an ebook. I also have paperback and also audiobook. So if you want to go on like Audible, or if you want Spotify, or even Google Books, wherever it is when audiobook is, it's there. I have it in a lot of different avenues. So it's available in any and all formats. So I highly recommend it. And I think, we're all performing in some aspect, whether we're, again, entrepreneur, a business owner, a professional, we're always performing in some aspect. So this book is relevant to all, disciplines. So I highly, I would definitely do my own work. And that's where I think the important thing with high self-esteem is being able to know we have a good product. It's not, but it's still, we have still room to grow. So I would always say, leave with that is like, we're always a work in progress. We always have room to grow. And I'm constantly, like I said, learning, new things. And, and I love learning. And that's, I think, a mindset I think we all should have, is the love of learning.
I agree with you 100%. Well, Dr. Bramante, I want to thank you so much for being a featured guest on our show today. Your insight, your strategies are so insightful. They're so powerful. And even though we're talking about complex topics dealing with the brain, you made it very simple. And I appreciate that, because you're the one who have the PhD and dealing with knowing the brain, but you was able to explain it to us in a way that we can grasp the information so that we can have a greater chance of being able to accomplish what it is that you set out in your book for us to be able to do. So I encourage all of you, you've been talking about the new you, new me, and you still at the same place you was at last year, then you need this book. Okay, because he's going to give you the tips and strategies that's going to help you and I be successful forever to our lifespan, I would say like that, as long as we have breath in our body. So on this note, you guys, I want to encourage you to download the CTR Media Network app, and I want to hand it back over to Dr. Bramante for a moment. Is there anything else you would like to say to our viewing audience before we sign off?
Sure. I would like to, give you the idea for the happy file for the audience. So here's the thing about a happy file. I'm as much as we have these apps, I always say keep a physical journal, whether it be a notebook, and always document your successes. There's no such thing as a minor success. So, if you're a content creator, you get a number of likes, you get a couple of good comments, write them down. If you're an entrepreneur and you get a good review from a customer or vendor, document that. You're an actor, you get good review from a casting director, an acting coach, an audience member, write that down. And keep writing these things down. And when you have those moments of self-doubt, because again, we're human beings. So that's another thing I want to say, self-doubt is completely normal, to have. So when those moments of self-doubt creep in, pull out your happy file, and that will remind you as to why you're doing what you're doing and what you really set out to do.
I love that. How about that? We can create a happy file for us. I love it, love it, love it. Again, you guys, this is how the book look. You can get it where books are being sold. And as you heard from him, you can get it in various different formats because we all learn different ways. Some of us are audio learners. Some of us are a blend between all. So he took care of all the hard work for you. So whatever is the way that you need to learn and be able to execute and follow through, get it in that form, okay? And again, the name of the book is Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt, Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists, or I would say for everyday people doing extraordinary things. Go ahead and pick up that book today. Thank you again, Dr. Aber, for being a featured guest and being on on CTR Media Network TV. And we'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy, and thank you for everyone who's watching.
All right. Okay, bye.
Well, you have any closing remarks before we head out?
Y'all, please support the movement of CTR Media Network. I'm telling you, being a part of this amazing media family, I can't go wrong, right? They have the support. They support us in all that we do. If we have questions, they take the time out to advise and mentor. So definitely check out the different plethora of shows that are on the network. I promise you, and I'm not saying this because I'm part of the family, but I promise you, you will be uplifted, inspired, educated, motivated, all the good stuff that we all need to carry ourselves out through the day. So definitely go check it out, y'all.
Awesome. I definitely appreciate you.